Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Utility Sports Plus. We are so excited for the return of the NFL season as week one is upon us, and we are going to bring our week one predictions and pick them just like we did all last year. We're really excited for it. Make sure you are subscribed to Utility Sports Plus. I know a lot of you have probably seen us in the past over on Utility Sports. We have now made a second channel, Utility Sports Plus, solely for NFL and football content. You'll see AP top 25s in here, NFL mock drafts, a lot of great NFL content by yours truly, Austin. He does a great job covering the NFL. His knowledge, of course, is there. So this is a great place to be for NFL content. Let's go ahead and jump into it now, Austin. With our pick'em records from this year, you can tell we are 0-0 at this point. Now, very interestingly, Austin last year was 9 games better than me. And I don't know how I was that close, to be honest with you. That's a real shocker from me. It was really a blessing to be that close to Austin, who is now 2 years in a row the winner of our pick'em and predictions. Austin, how does it feel to be back in the winning throne again coming into year 3?
You know, last year, if I wasn't so pessimistic on the Jags, I could have had a better year. But, you know, we all have our teams that we fall in love with and teams that we hate for no reason. So we'll have to see how this year goes, but I think this is your year.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm a little bit more pessimistic about my chances going into this season. So let's jump into it now with some Thursday night football. There you can see the records from last year. And let's jump into it with Thursday night football. The Detroit Lions at the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, both of us are going with the Chiefs. That does not mean we are super pessimistic about the Detroit Lions. In fact, coming into this year, I feel like they are the best team in the NFC North. I expect them to win the NFC North and be a playoff team this year, which is a huge step forward for that organization. Dan Campbell's got those boys playing right. But Austin, they're a tough matchup here to start the year. First game of the regular season, Chiefs at home. Is there a team in the league that could beat the Chiefs in this situation?
Yeah, I think there's a number of teams that would give them a very competitive game. Detroit, I'm just super concerned about defensively. They had taken some big strides in the offseason in terms of acquiring talent via free agency, as well as addressing it during the draft. And I think with where Detroit has gone so far, they're just not there yet to really compete with Kansas City, especially going on the road. If the Lions were at home, I definitely would have thought about it a little bit more. However, Detroit's on the right trajectory. I think they have a lot of things going for them moving forward. However, I think Kansas City is a tough matchup for them, despite there being some looming concerns about, Chris Jones's availability. I think that, to be completely transparent, Kansas City is going to win this game. It's going to be a lot of offensive fireworks, but to me, I feel pretty confident.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, that's a really tough trio to beat. We've seen NFL teams over the last 3-4 years really struggle with that trio. So it's a pretty safe bet here to put your money on the Chiefs. Now, again, we are doing money line in this. So we're just going through and thinking about which teams we're going to beat. Obviously, the actual over-under, that kind of stuff, the spread, that changes throughout the week a little bit, which is why we don't cover that. But there's an argument there for the Lions in covering, I believe, what is currently a -6.5 spread, which you have to think sounds pretty good for them. Going into our next game now, and I believe this carries us into the Sunday slate where we've got a ton of good action here and a lot of good NFL football on Sunday. We're starting off with the NFC South. The Carolina Panthers head into Atlanta to take the Falcons. I think a lot of people probably like the Panthers here as kind of a surprise underdog, but for me, I'm all in on Arthur Smith as a head coach. I think he always elevates this Falcons roster to play better than they are. And now it's going to be Desmond Ritter's show there in Atlanta. Austin, talk about the ATL here a little bit. What do you expect from the Falcons this year? And then what about this matchup against Carolina?
Yeah, a divisional opponent facing off right away. It's exciting stuff in a division that there's a lot of uncertainty. There's no clear divisional favorite to me going into the season. This and the NFC North has the most amount of variables, actually going into it. So I think when you look at Atlanta and what they have to offer, they're going to offer a very strong running game. Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, all of those guys are going to make some impact on the ground. Desmond Ridder has, a full season under his belt, has some experience, has, another full offseason to really pick up this playbook and get to learn, from one of the great offensive minds that we have in today's game with Arthur Smith. Carolina is a sneaky team, though. I think they're going to be a little bit better than people are expecting. Bryce Young should have a nice rookie season. I think in terms of his polish coming out of college, he is an exciting player to watch moving forward. They gave up a lot for him, and I think it might be potentially warranted. However, I still see Atlanta as the better team right now, especially with them at home. I trust the Falcons in this one.
Two offensive rookie of the year candidates for sure between Bryce Young and Bijan Robinson, who you highlighted. Austin, I'm going to give you an over-under here, something we like to do in these videos. Over under 100 yards for Bijan Robinson on the ground.
I think he is actually going to hit the under on this game. Now, there are some people that would be pretty excited about his ceiling, and especially going up against Carolina. However, I feel like they're going to have a lot of Algier run in this game. I think they're going to work him in a little bit, and I don't think it's going to be 100% line share for this team. So for me, I'm actually going to take that under, despite me thinking that he's going to have a very nice yards per carry.
Definitely a really good player. Let's jump into our next game now. And we'll highlight here the Houston Texans heading into Baltimore to take on the Ravens. Now, you and I both went with the Ravens here. We do think, at least I tentatively believe, that the Texans are trending in the right direction. Of course, really shook up NFL mock drafts a year ago by trading up to number 3 as well to go with picks 2 and 3 in the draft in CJ Stroud and Will Anderson. Also, I know how much you love those two as prospects, specifically Anderson on the edge, but this team's still really young. And we're just not sure what we're going to get to start out of the gate here for the Texans. Do the Ravens feel like a no-brainer lock at this point?
I feel pretty confident in them. I think the Texans have a lot of identity to truly figure out on the offensive side of the football. They are going to be improved. Going from Davis Mills to CJ Stroud actually will be an improvement, despite CJ Stroud being a rookie. There is a little bit more to his game, a little more polish, a little bit more accuracy that you can trust with him. He had some ups and some downs during the preseason, but I think that their floor has elevated with him as the starting level quarterback. Their defense actually should be pretty interesting, adding a guy like Will Anderson on the edge, and that secondary continues to get better. Jalen Petrie, Derek Stingley, all players that are going to be high impact guys heading into the season.
Last year, the Texans ranked second last in the NFL with only 17 points per game scored. You have to imagine that's going to be better this year with CJ Stroud, Tank Dell, John Mechie now playing as well. Texans will be better, just probably not good enough to knock off the Ravens at home. Let's jump into our next one as we look at a matchup here between the Cincinnati Bengals heading into Cleveland. And this is a tough one, Austin. You ended up going with the Browns here. There's some concerns and questions about Joe Burrow's status. Of course, did return to practice this past week. We're both kind of under the assumption he's probably going to play for this game. For me, that's a real strong security blanket. Having Joe Burrow, having the weapons that they have there in Cincinnati, that's the reason I went with the Bengals. But Austin, you went on the flip side here. Our first difference of opinion in this one. Why'd you go with the Browns?
I think Cleveland being at home helps in this kind of situation, playing in the dog pound. But another part of that is Joe Burrow's health. What is he going to be able to do week 1? I think that if all things are equal and Joe Burrow is playing at a healthy level, to me, it's still the Bengals. But I think with some of these other unknown variables, Joe Burrow missing weeks of practice, things like that, there's going to be a little bit of rust to try to kick off. Now, if there's any quarterback that can come back from an injury and just step in and be himself, it's going to be Joe Burrow. But at the end of the day, I do have some genuine concerns. And I think Cleveland, with Deshaun Watson, a full offseason with him here and getting him in the building and comfortable and trying to knock off some of that rust, I think Cleveland has a very competitive roster, and I think that they can win this game.
Their trench play is going to be very, very good. And of course, that's going to be the challenge for the Bengals. It basically has been since they made the decision of Jamar Chase over Penei Sewell. Of course, that drew a lot of speculation back then. And, the offensive line's still been the big question for them. If they can hold up, protect Burrow, like you said, who's a little, injured coming back off of his injury, I think it's going to be a big thing to watch for this game and this season. Let's jump into our next one now. We look at my favorite matchup of the week, and it's a really dominant team in the AFC South versus the Indianapolis Colts. And yes, traveling on the road, interdivision game, anything can happen, but I'm telling you right now, this is my lock for the week. The Jaguars smoke the Indianapolis Colts in Anthony Richardson's first career action. No Jonathan Taylor. Now, the Jaguars, they do have a lot of work to do to figure out how Richardson's going to play. We don't have any NFL film on him, really. But, of course, at Florida, he was a highlight reel. He's going to be a lot of fun to watch. But the Jaguars, they're the real deal. Playoff team last year. I think that the ceiling for this team is maybe a 12-13 win team. And I know that sounds crazy. Austin's not going to like that. He's a Jaguars fan himself, but he's pretty low on his team typically. Austin, I'm going to remember this. You went with the Jaguars week 1.
Yeah, interesting. And part of this is due to Jonathan Taylor's his unavailability there. And I'm looking at it from the standpoint of Anthony Richardson has a long ways to go as a passer. I think on the ground, he should have a very good season, but he's going to struggle a lot during the course of the year because let's not forget at Florida, very inaccurate, very inaccurate. And at the NFL level, that's only going to be amplified. So there's going to be some struggles. There's going to be points and times where they're going to have, 3 interception games. I do feel like that's a real possibility here. They're going to have to stick with it because he is one of those players that could be, potentially a top 5 level guy when it's all said and done if he can hit his ceiling. But that's a big if. There's a lot of factors that go into it, a lot of external factors outside of him as well that will really help determine the trajectory of his career. But I'm with you on this one. I think the Jags get the job done. I wouldn't say this is going to be necessarily a blowout, but I think that, the Jags should win this game.
You heard it here first. Duval County starting 1-0 this season. Let's go ahead and jump forward into our next matchup. And Austin, this one feels like another lock type of game. Now, it's always hard. Week 1's such a kind of up in the air thing because sometimes we don't see what this team's going to turn into. The identity changes. The team maybe way overperforms the early expectations for them. But the Buccaneers feel like one of those teams that isn't slated to have a great year, especially in the first year post Tom Brady. What's your thoughts here on the Buccaneers as they head into US Bank Stadium in Minnesota?
For a team that struggled as mightily as they did with Tom Brady is their quarterback. That's something we hadn't seen in a very, very long time. And I don't expect anything to change heading into this year in terms of that struggle continuing throughout the course of the entire team. Both of us are generally lower on Todd Bowles and his ability to coach an NFL franchise. Bruce Arians led teams much better with Tom Brady, but with the Todd Bowles one, there was a noticeable change in difference in terms of the actual aura of the team. To me, I feel pretty confident in the Vikings at home here. A lot of talent on the perimeter. TJ Hawkinson's going to be another big factor in this game. But Tampa Bay is probably going to have some issues, keeping up with this Vikings offense. I think that's a real possibility. Unless, maybe Baker Mayfield proves a lot of us wrong, but I think there's going to be some struggles. Rashad White should have a pretty good game in my opinion, but they have a lot of talent on offense, but it's quarterback position where there's a lot of questions on where they're going to peak as a team.
I think my favorite aspect of this game is, you have Todd Bowles, who is a defensive-minded head coach. How is he going to go about covering Justin Jefferson? Of course, everyone looking at Justin Jefferson as probably the best wide receiver in the NFL now and moving forward. So is he going to see a ton of double coverage? And my expectation to that is yes. But then out of it, where do the Vikings go with their target share? They have a lot of other amplified pieces. TJ Hawkinson, who they traded for last year, Jordan Addison, who they drafted in round 1, Alexander Mattison, a former draft pick of theirs, who is now stepping into that RB1 role with the departure of Dalvin Cook. I think if those 3 guys specifically step up big time, maybe even KJ Osborne out of the slot a bit, this Vikings team could be really dangerous this year, but specifically in this game, it gives them a huge advantage over the Buccaneers, which is why I went with the Vikings as well. Let's jump into the next game now, and we look at one here between the Tennessee Titans and the New Orleans Saints. And Austin, you and I both landed on the Saints. I think that a lot of people are going to look at this game closer than I do. For me, I'm really low on the Tennessee Titans. They scream to me like a team that's old, and they're going to get aged out this year. DeAndre Hopkins, I think, is going to have a down year similar to what we saw from Julio Jones in Tennessee. I think Ryan Tannehill probably is not the starting quarterback by week 15 of this season. And Derrick Henry, he's awesome, but it doesn't really move me for the way that this team's going to win a ton of regular season games. I think Tennessee's in line for a bad season. That's my expectation, Austin. I know you're probably a little deferring in opinion from where I'm at, but Austin, you have the Saints here as well. What's your kind of thoughts on this game as they head into Louisiana?
I think that this is kind of an interesting game considering that New Orleans had a lot of changes in the offseason, more specifically at that quarterback spot. Alvin Kamara is not going to be playing week 1, obviously. Therefore, it opens up a lot of identity change for this team. Michael Thomas's return, Chris Olave, and how great he was last year. Is he going to take another step forward? This team should be able to win this game. They're at home. Tennessee has a lot of question marks across the board. I think age is the biggest concern, and this might be the biggest drop-off year that we potentially see from them. Derrick Henry's been great, but there's going to be a certain point in time when he can only amass so many carries, as much as we want to believe that he's almost superhuman with how he's built. A lot of those miles start to add up, and we could see a form of regression, whether it's this year or next year, I don't know. But, I mean, for how much he's had to carry this team, all the carries he's amounted, it's going to add up. I am very pessimistic on Ryan Tannehill, and I completely agree in the notion that we could be seeing Malik Willis or Will Levis starting at even closer than week 15. I think there's a lot of pressure on this organization to win, as well as for Mike Vrabel. So a lot of expectations in a division that's not very good. I mean, they should be expected to be right at the top or near the top.
Last season, they crumbled as the pressure mounted, with Jacksonville kind of closing the distance and then ultimately surpassing them. Week 1's a really big game for them. We'll see if they can get it done in New Orleans, but right now we don't like their odds. Let's jump into the next game now. We look at a matchup here between San Francisco, the 49ers. They head into Pittsburgh. These are two storied NFL franchises, a really great week 1 matchup. And Pittsburgh at home gives them a huge advantage in my eyes for this game, which I think a lot of people are going to look at the 49ers as the favorite. In my opinion, I think they're the second best team in the NFC as currently constituted. But I do have some concerns about Brock Purdy. Week 1, can he kind of replicate some of the magic he had last season? Some of his great plays that he had, especially against a Mike Tomlin-led team on the road. Those are some of the questions I have. Look at the Steelers defense, always so competitive. Minkah Fitzpatrick just feels like, for me, he's going to make a huge play in this game. And I think ultimately the Steelers, I think Kenny Pickett's due for a big step forward. Not that he's going to be a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback or anything like that, but I think he's going to be much better than he was as a rookie, kind of that normal, typical year 2 jump. Austin, what do you like about the 49ers here other than just they're awesome?
Yeah, I have a hard time with this one because I do trust Mike Tomlin-led team at home, especially early on in the season. He has a pretty good track record in terms of the start of the season playing at home. But I look at the 49ers as a team that is just so competitive all across the board. Defensively, along their defensive line, linebacking unit, the secondary, they are competitive. Now, on offense, there's a lot more questions, but when you have a running back like Christian McCaffrey and you have a guy like Deebo Samuel on the perimeter, there's a lot of different things that you can do with your offense. I think it might overmatch Pittsburgh a little bit. Pittsburgh in the offseason did improve their offensive line, but I don't think it's enough to move the needle against, a front that they're going to face in San Francisco. A lot of pressure on Kenny Pickett. And it's actually going to be a heavy reliance on Najee Harris to carry the load, which last year he had a lot of struggles, mainly because he had a plate in his foot. But at the end of the day, I think there's some room for improvement for the Steelers. But week 1, I do have some confidence in the 49ers.
Again, I think this is a great matchup. I'm really looking forward to this one. This might be one of the games of the week, honestly, that you want to really tune into if you're not one of these local fans, if you're not a fan of the Steelers or Niners. I still think this is going to be really great football starting here in week 1. Let's jump into the next game. We take a look at the Cardinals heading into Washington to face the Commanders, and it's good I got my great football speech out of the way because I'm not sure if we're going to be seeing a ton of that this year from the Caleb Williams-led, that's next year, the Arizona Cardinals. Also, we both have the Commanders here at this spot. No Kyler Murray. It sounds like either Clayton Tune or Josh Dobbs is going to be the starting quarterback. We are recording this on Sunday ahead of the week. So, we're not really sure who the starting quarterback is going to be for the Cardinals. Does it really even matter, though, Austin?
I don't think so, but I think there's another part of the equation that actually could make it a little bit more interesting is, Sam Howell. And I think Sam Howell is going to really dictate how the season's going to play out for the Commanders and what he can raise their ceiling to. But there's just too many playmakers on offense, especially at the receiver position for the Commanders. I just don't like Arizona and what they have to offer currently. Maybe they surprise some people week 1, but I'd be shocked if on the road with this current roster, if they could actually win a game against a team that's not super highly regarded in the Commanders, that to be the worst, team in that actual division. So to me, I don't have a ton of confidence, and that's not to say that the Cardinals can't be good in the future here, but right now, I think they have their mindset on something else.
Yeah, this is your typical teardown year. Brand new head coach. You made a great trade in the offseason to get a pick from Houston next season for the next draft, so you're probably going to have 2 top 5, top 10-ish picks. You're in a great spot long term if you're an Arizona Cardinal fan. Just not for week 1 here against Washington, who is not the best opponent, but it's an opponent that's way better than your team, in my opinion, currently constituted. So I think Washington's a safe pick here and probably is viewed as a lock by most people. Let's jump into the next one now. We look at the Packers and Bears, another NFC North matchup here. And boy, is this a good one, Austin. I think, you and I kind of ended on the same decision going with the Green Bay Packers, but there was a lot of thought that went into this one. It wasn't just Green Bay over Chicago for sure. We're in Chicago. That obviously gives the Bears a huge advantage here. And we have 2 kind of unproven quarterbacks. Of course, there's a ton of buzz around Justin Fields. Jordan Love's been kind of flying under the radar, in my opinion. What do you expect from him? What do you expect from Fields? Why'd you go with Green Bay? I think this is going to be a great matchup as well.
Yeah, once again, early season divisional opponent squaring off. I like Green Bay's roster as it currently sits ahead of the Chicago Bears. The Bears made a lot of improvements in the offseason, spending a lot of money in free agency, addressing the team through the draft, taking care of a lot of what they needed to do. However, I just don't feel that this roster is just there yet. But I think Jordan Love and him going under the radar this offseason has created a lot of buzz actually for me and interest. It's going to be weird not seeing Aaron Rodgers suit up for the Packers. It's going to be a different identity, but they have some good young pieces on this roster. They're going to run the football very effectively, especially in week one, in my opinion. So that's really what kind of moves the needle for me. And I think Green Bay on the road is actually probably not going to be the most common pick. I think there's a lot of people loving the, Chicago being at home factor in a divisional game. But to me, I think Green Bay can still get the job done on the road.
Of course, there were reports as well within the last week that the Green Bay Packers were actually a team interested in acquiring Jonathan Taylor, and we're having serious discussions with the Indianapolis Colts. Now, it's interesting. They have Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon. Austin, what do you make of that rumor real quick, just before we jump into this next game?
I think it's just a team that's looking to add young talent is all it is. I think they feel comfortable with their running back room, but I think maybe they had another trade potentially lined up to send A.J. Dillon out the door. So I think that's something that we have to consider here. Obviously, you want to raise your ceiling as a team, and by trading for a Pro Bowl level running back is going to help, elevate that ceiling for a team.
Yeah, especially with Jordan Love as he goes into his first year as a full starter, having that security would be really nice for Green Bay. But ultimately, I still believe in the talent on their team. I think they're going to be pretty good this year and an under-the-radar team in a more competitive NFC North. Let's jump forward now into what we see here is a matchup between the Las Vegas Raiders and, again, another interdivision game. Very interesting that the NFL schedules so many interdivision games for week one. I know how you feel about that. And they head into Denver to take on the Broncos. You went with Denver at home. Obviously, the altitude gives them a pretty good advantage. The Broncos fans always show out big time for their home team, but I went with the Raiders here, and I'm still not over last season. Listen, the Broncos just were not good. They finished last in the NFL in scoring. Now, hiring Sean Payton goes a long way in fixing that. He knows how to run an offense, and coach went up very, very well. But, I just can't shake what I saw from Russell Wilson last year. He looked not great. And, I've been seeing all the memes on Twitter about Shedeur Sanders has done more for Colorado already than Russell Wilson did all of last year. It's kind of true. So I went with the Raiders here. I do like Max Crosby. I like what the Raiders have in terms of some of their weapons on offense. Of course, Josh Jacobs was great last season as well. But Austin, I do understand kind of the home field advantage here. How much does that play into your pick? And what do you kind of think about the Broncos as a whole with Peyton this year?
I think both teams have identity crises at this point, because looking at where they're both at, having Sean Payton, having Josh McDaniels, there's going to be a lot of changes here that you see with these offenses. More specifically, Denver has to make a lot of adjustments with how they played last year, how inefficient they were on offense. Their defense is great, and that's the big tipping point for me. This defense is still legit. I think they're going to get the job done. The Raiders' defense is not nearly at the level of Denver's. Plus, Denver is at home. Therefore, for me, I really like the Broncos in this one.
I want to remind the viewers, remember last year Austin smoked me in pick'em on the season. So if you ever see a game like this where Austin's going one way, I'm going the other, you probably want to lean more toward his way, especially if you're putting money on it. And also, a really important note, the reason I'm bringing this up, last year I picked probably wrong on the Raiders about 13 times, Austin. I know you remember that. I thought they were going to be awesome coming out of the gate. I picked them like all the time to win. They kept losing, and I'd pick them to lose, and then they win. Whatever I say, they do the opposite. So that Broncos money line's looking pretty nice right about now. Let's jump into our next one. We look at a matchup here, and this is one of the best ones of the week as well. I feel like I've said that a lot. There's a lot of great matchups this week. Miami Dolphins, they head into Los Angeles. They're flying across the country, going from Florida over to California to play in LA at SoFi Stadium to take on the Chargers. Austin, obviously, you're kind of betting against the team traveling here, going with the Chargers. For me, the Dolphins, I think the big question here is, what does the cornerback play for the Chargers look like? What kind of J.C. Jackson are they going to get? Of course, kind of disappointing year last year after that big contract. And how do they go about slowing down a Tyreek Hill, a Jalen Waddle, and some of the weapons that Miami has there for Tua Tagovailoa to play with? I think that's going to be a big question for them, Austin. What do you like about the Chargers, though, in this matchup?
I think that the Chargers have so many weapons on offense, just like Miami does. So this one was kind of a coin flip for me. I leaned initially at the Dolphins, and I thought about it a little bit more. I like Justin Herbert versus Tua. but there's a lot of explosion with this game. Obviously having Keenan Allen and Mike Williams is not equivalent to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, but at the end of the day, I trust Justin Herbert. I think he's going to have a humongous offensive game, and I have the Chargers narrowly, beating the Dolphins here while they're at home. I don't put a lot of stock into that part of it. It's just, some matchups here that I do like for the Chargers.
This is going to be an interesting one to see later on Twitter. Some of the Dolphins and Chargers communities are going to be going after each other because, remember, Tua and Herbert were picked in the same draft, and there was a lot of speculation about which quarterback should have gone higher. This is going to be a kind of defining moment for those two potentially in a week 1 matchup. Let's go ahead and jump forward now as we look at the Eagles taking on the Patriots. And typically going into Gillette Stadium feels like a nightmare, especially later in the season. Now, week 1, maybe you're at a little bit of an advantage getting that game early on in the season. Austin, if this was any other NFC team, maybe we'd be a little bit more concerned, but it's the Philadelphia Eagles. They were just in the Super Bowl. They're such an elite team. I would argue that they even got a lot better this offseason. This team is loaded. Now, they do have some turnover. The coordinator positions have changed. We'll see what that does to impact their season and how they perform. Of course, they were so dominant in so many areas last year that I still feel pretty comfortable in them as a team. Austin, clearly you do as well. What do you like about Philadelphia this year, and how far can they go?
Philadelphia made a lot of changes in the offseason despite being the loser of the Super Bowl. A lot of times they try to stay pat and stay right where they're at, but they were aggressive in terms of some of the moves that they made. Obviously acquiring DeAndre Swift they felt was a positive move heading into the year, which they bought low on a guy that actually does have a lot of pure talent as a runner. So I think he is going to have a very nice season for the Eagles. They're going to rush a lot of different guys, but Jalen Hurts is the big X factor here against New England. New England, I do have some offensive concerns. I think, mixing Ramondre Stevenson, Ezekiel Elliott will be kind of an interesting dynamic, but at the end of the day, I think that they are pretty much overmatched in a lot of phases. If there's one coach that can overcome some talent deficiencies, it will be Bill Belichick, but to me, I think the Eagles are just too stout across the board to lose this game.
Yeah, they've made a lot of great moves this offseason. I like the Eagles a ton. For me, I think that they're a Super Bowl caliber team. Once again, we'll see where the season takes us. But right now, I like a lot of bets on the Philadelphia Eagles moving forward. Let's go ahead and jump forward now into our next matchup. And this is a really interesting one. The Los Angeles Rams, probably the most disappointing team in the NFL last year. They actually ranked last in the NFL in total yardage, which is not what you would have expected from a Sean McVay-led team. And they go into Seattle, who was kind of the Cinderella surprise team last year, with Geno Smith being the comeback player of the year, the real surprise X factor for that team out of nowhere. I don't think a lot of people were expecting them to get better without Russell Wilson a year ago. It's exactly what happened. The Seahawks, they've added to their secondary, had a really nice draft, grabbing Devin Witherspoon early in the draft. You look at their cornerback room, Jamal Adams should be back healthy at some point this year. I believe he is out for week 1. Austin, what do you like about the Seahawks here? Of course, being at home with the 12s does go a long way for them as well.
It's a big factor in it, and I think, having Matt Stafford coming back into this kind of environment is a tough one, but I like what Seattle did in the offseason. You had alluded to Devin Witherspoon in that secondary, Tariq Woolen, two corners that are going to be phenomenal this year, in my opinion. You look at their offense, Jackson Smith and Jigba, another big name that they added during the course of the offseason, which will make a tremendous impact for them moving the change. I think with 3 wide receivers at the caliber that they have, plus the running back room that they have, let's not forget about Kenneth Walker, big-time playmaker, Zach Charbonnet, 2 running backs that are going to be a phenomenal 1-2 tandem. This Seattle offense is actually pretty scary, and I look forward to watching them this season.
For me, I went with the Rams solely because I think this team, obviously they didn't start the year great last year. They got blown out by the Buffalo Bills to begin the season. And from there, it was kind of a nightmare, right? Everything went wrong for this team. But the one thing I do want to point out, they averaged way less yards per game last year than they did 2 years ago when they won the Super Bowl. And I think this year with Stafford hopefully back healthy, if Kupp can stay healthy this year, and if this team just kind of finds their stride again, they're going to be much better than they were a year ago. They're not going to be that bad again. And I think that they could be a real surprise team this year because I'm sure the expectations around them right now are significantly lower than they were as reigning Super Bowl champs. And for me, they feel like a really good upset pick this week, which is why I went with them. You always have to try and find picks that you feel kind of confident with, and the Rams were the one for me this week that I like as a surprise team going into this matchup. Let's jump into our next one here. We look at a really great matchup again, another interdivision one here in the NFC East. The Dallas Cowboys head into New Jersey to take on the New York Giants. Austin, you went with the Cowboys here on the road. I went with the Giants at home. Brian Daboll, what a great coach, did a great job with this team. Now, Daniel Jones got paid. Saquon Barkley signed a weird one-year deal that I wouldn't have advised him to sign, but he signed it. They've got their quarterback and running back still in place. It looks like they've been making efforts to improve the pass catching room. Of course, Darren Waller, their wide receivers, they're hoping for some more continued growth from them. I like the Giants here solely because of the way that they play under Brian Daboll. I think that they found a rhythm, they found a stride. The team just got elevated based on the scheme and really what he was asking them to do. And at home here in an interdivision game always feels huge for me. But Austin, you went with the Cowboys on the road. What do you really like about them in this matchup?
And it's tough for me because I always tend to lean home on divisional games. But at this point, I love Dallas and their current roster. I think Tony Pollard is going to have a massive season. The departure of Ezekiel Elliott meant very little to me in the grand scheme of how I see this team, but tremendous offense. I think they're going to be a potential top 10 offense and have that ability to have some big plays. Now, CeeDee Lamb is another reason for this. He's going to take another step forward heading into this season. But I think with Micah Parsons, and as dominant as he is, he's going to have a big hand on this game. I was very close on this one because I do think that the Giants present a lot of challenges and matchups that you can like against a team like Dallas. But to me, Dallas on the road here, this would be a humongous win for them.
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to be a big one, and this is going to really set the tone for the NFC East this year on who wins this game. Of course, there's a lot of great matchups, and really this is the only NFC East team that's not, or that these are the only interdivision NFC East matchups. So, you know, possibly the Commanders win, possibly the Eagles win, and if you lose this game, you're already one game back of everyone in the division. So there's a lot of pressure here in this matchup already week one into the season. Let's jump ahead forward now into our next one, and it's Monday Night Football, and we're going to see these teams in a lot of primetime situations. The New York Jets, of course, were the headliner of the offseason. Now, I'm a Jets fan, so Jets fans don't get too peeved at me. Now, typically, the comment section doesn't like me as much as a Jets fan. I try to keep it real. Listen, the Bills, a year ago, had all the hype in the world. They were supposed to be the team that won the Super Bowl. That was the expectation set upon them. And there's been a little bit less noise about the Bills this year. Of course, there's been the DeMar Hamlin storyline. Glad to see him back on the 53-man roster. Glad to see him back healthy. That's great to see. But the team otherwise, there's not as much buzz and hype around them. And I think they're going to come into the season with a mentality of, let's go get the job done. And if there's going to be a team that rivals the Chiefs in the AFC, it is going to be the Buffalo Bills. And I think that they have a real shot this year at being the team that potentially knocks them off. I like the Jets. The Jets have gotten a lot better. Austin, I know you like the Jets as well. I'm going to remember this pick. I'm going to remember this one. You picked the Bills here in New York. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, it's very tough because if this were a week 3 matchup, I actually probably would have taken the Jets in this one. But I think with week 1, there's going to be some kinks with this offense that they're trying to figure out. The defense is going to be great for the Jets. Don't get me wrong. But considering it's week 1, they got to hash out a couple of the lack of chemistry, I guess you can say, about this team. But Buffalo is still a tremendous roster, tremendous quarterback. They have some big play ability. I think they're going to run the football a little bit more effectively this year. But it was a tough matchup. It was a very tough one to pick, but I'm pretty happy I landed on the Bills for at least week 1. I think even later in the season, I might flip-flop my pick on, if I like the Jets on the road.
So here's the thing. Joe Douglas, when he drafted Jermaine Johnson, he said, we need a guy who can go sack Josh Allen. He's always good for one of those types of quotes, Austin. I'm going to set the over-under here for you. 0.5 sacks for Jermaine Johnson in this one.
Smash the over.
Smash the over. All right. Well, Josh Allen's not going to touch the ground all day now that Austin said that. Jets, I'm hoping for a great game here. This is going to be a fun Monday Night Football matchup to watch. Been a lot of fun here in this one. Do we have a second Monday Night Football game this week, Austin, or is it just the one?
That's it.
Just the one. All right, perfect. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Hopefully you guys did enjoy. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe for more content here at Utility Sports Plus as well. Really do appreciate you guys stopping. Leave your picks down in the comment section. We'd love to hear who you guys are betting on this week, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports Plus video.